Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're listening to us from. Welcome to Crossing America live from Mammoth Cave National Park. Do me a favor and post in the chat where you're listening from. We would love to know where everyone is watching. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am loving to watch Mammoth Cave and our Crossing America with our ranger and Dr. Drizzle.
Well, we are glad you're here. We're going to start in about 1 minute. Miss Brown, if I'm not mistaken, you were here this summer with us at Mammoth Cave. What was one of your favorite things to do?
One of my favorite things to do was to climb through those caves. I really enjoyed that was a workout, but I enjoyed climbing through those caves. But I also remember standing right where you are.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in seeing what those caves look like, you can check out our Expeditions and Education YouTube channel and look for Mammoth Cave, and you'll see Ranger Jennifer and I going through the caves a few years ago. So make sure you check that out. We're going to start in 40 seconds. So get ready.
Well, we have Miss Middleton and her class from Enrico, Virginia, and we have a class from Huntsville, Alabama. We have some Firefly friends with Miss Turner's class. And of course, we have Uplift Michigan Online School.
Miss Middleton, I think I'm correct in saying that we're going to be actually at your school in March. We're going to be at Oak Grove in Georgia on the March the 4th, and I believe we're going to be at your school on March the 6th. Let Miss Brown know if I'm correct on that.
Don't forget, post in the chat.
All right, everyone. So welcome to Crossing America. We are doing a live stream today from Mammoth Cave National Park. So we're going to ask a couple things of you before we start. Please make sure that your microphones are muted. Because we are sending this out to so many different people, they need to stay muted. You're going to have conversations with Miss Brown in the chat window when you have questions. And unfortunately, if we have too much chatter on the microphones, we have to remove people because we can't hear here. Here, did you like that? But we're excited that you're here. So welcome everyone, my name is Dr. Drizzle, and this is Crossing America live stream at Mammoth Cave National Park. We're here at Sloan's Pond. We want to do a special shout out to the National Park Foundation for their collaboration on this project, and also with Mammoth Cave. So Ranger Jennifer, we are so thrilled that you're here today.
We are so excited to have all of you all here. Welcome to Mammoth Cave National Park and to Sloan's Crossing Pond.
Now, we are going to have a great time. Now, we're going to introduce a few more people that have been with us all morning working. So we're going to switch a camera, and you're going to meet Ranger Lizette and Junior Ranger Leanne. So can we give them a big wave in the chat window saying hello? Now, we've had them out in the pond for a couple of hours now looking for water critters, and they have been pretty successful. And we're going to share some of those water critters with you in just a little bit. But we're going to let our water critter surveyors come out of the water just for a bit so they can rest. So again, thank you so much for being here today. If you have a question, please drop it in the chat window, and Miss Brown will interrupt us and let us know when we have questions. But let's just go ahead and get started. So Ranger Jennifer, we're at Sloan's Crossing Pond.
Yes.
This was originally formed. It wasn't always here. Can you tell us how this was originally formed and when this was originally formed?
Yes. So here at Sloan's Crossing Pond, first you need to understand that before we became a national park, this was communities. You know, there were people living here, there were homesteads, and in the 1930s, when the National Park Service, when this was becoming a national park, in this area, they decided to make a new ecosystem. It was already a swampy area. We're up on top of a sandstone caprock, and so they actually built this pond. So we would have this nice pond ecosystem.
Well, what role has Sloan's Pond played in the history of Mammoth Cave?
Okay. Well, historically, it was a wetland where we had this nice little kind of swampy marsh area. And we aren't sure about this one or not, but we think that trains even used to stop here when they were going over to the historic entrance area and the old hotel. So we think this might have been kind of a little break where they would stop before they started going kind of uphill towards the hotel area. So sort of a fun part of the history.
I love that. So kids, if you have your journals, get those ready and get your pencils or pens ready. So let's do the date again.
Okay.
When this was created as a pond.
In the 1930s, and the people who were actually doing that work were the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, and those were young men from all over the nation that came here to help us become a national park. They built structures like some stone picnic shelters, some bridges within the park, and they built this pond as well.
And the CCC is also very important to our national parks in general. A lot of parks across the country, these trail systems or these buildings were built by the CCC. So I want you to check that out. Make sure you have that written in your journal and do some research on what other parks the CCC has worked in. Well, we have this pond here, and some people might say, well, the trees aren't budding and it's not very pretty here. It is absolutely gorgeous here. Every season of this place is beautiful. But tell us, why is Sloan's Pond so vital to the ecosystem here?
It's really vital to the ecosystem because it's just giving this nice wetland habitat to all different kinds of critters. There are a lot of macroinvertebrates, and we're going to look at some of those in a little bit, that Ranger Lizette and our junior ranger Leanne took out earlier. Whoops, lost my earpiece. Sorry about that, you all. And you also have a habitat for things like fish. You know, there are fish in here, there are frogs, there are turtles. You can find a lot of things when it's warmer out. You might find like a northern water snake kind of hanging out on some of these branches behind us, and also they like to go down in the water. But it's a place for other animals to stop and take a break.
Okay,
You know,
well, like us even.
Like us, we can stop and come out on this nice boardwalk and take a break and walk around. There's a trail that goes all the way around it. Bats. You know, Mammoth Cave, we are famous because we've got all kinds of cool critters in the cave like bats. And when it's nice out and they're not hibernating, they can come here at night and kind of swoop down when they're out, get a drink of water. So it's just a great habitat for all kinds of animals.
Well, we did have our water surveyors out early, and we want to make sure that we look at some of the things. Now, unfortunately, they found some trash out here. So that's probably a bad use of humans. The impact of humans was pretty bad there, right? They left trash, and this was actually a plastic lid off a Gatorade bottle.
Yes.
So we definitely don't want the trash here. When people are hiking this trail, what should they think about, remember about trash?
Okay. So whenever you're here at the park and you're hiking, or when you're hiking anywhere, you need to remember that you need to leave no trace. You need to follow those principles, and whatever you take with you, if you have a bottle of water or maybe you're chewing some gum, you want to make sure you leave with that, or you put it in a proper, you know, recycling receptacle or a trash can for your chewing gum. You don't just want to toss it down.
If you want to look that up, Leave No Trace has 7 principles that the national parks follow. Before we show some of these critters, we do have a question in the chat window. So Miss Brown, can you tell us the question? So who is Sloan, and why is it named Sloan's Pond?
That is a great question, and I am not exactly sure who Sloan was. That's something we would have to do some research on.
So that is a Stump the Scientist
You have
question.
stumped the
Ranger.
scientist.
Okay, so we want you to put that in your notes, something we're going to look up. So let's go ahead and start looking at these critters. Now, I know that we identified these today, some by just knowing what they were, but we used something called a dichotomous key.
Yes.
So you're going to hold up this right now, and I want you to take a look at this, kids, because we are going to actually use this. Tell us what a dichotomous key is.
So a dichotomous key is something that you can use depending on the key. You can have a dichotomous key for insects or for these macroinvertebrates or for a tree even. But you're going to start at the beginning and look for some key characteristics. So what do we want to, are we going to look at one of these?
Yeah, we are.
See.
So I'm going to pull up this little guy. So this is, I will describe him a little bit to you. I'm going to try to get a little bit closer and hold this up. If I turn him a little bit, you might be able to see. There we go. So let's talk about this little guy.
Okay, so at the beginning it says, how many legs does our creature have? And so it says no legs, body is worm-like. We would need to flip to number 1. Does it have legs, Dr.
It does
Drizzle?
have some legs, and
It
its body
does.
is fat.
Does it have more than 6 legs or less than 6 legs?
It has less than 6 legs?
Less than 6 legs?
All
Okay,
right.
then that says on this dichotomous key that we are going to go to page 3. So here we go. We've went to page 3, and we're going to try to figure out, oh, I know exactly what it is. You all just looked at a giant water bug.
All right, so in your journals, would you please sketch this water bug? It has sort of an oval-shaped body with a point on either end. It has antennas. I think it has 2 antennas, but they're more like claws.
Almost
They
like
kind of
pinchers.
look pinchers. And it has 4 legs, okay? So sketch that into your journal and write the word water bug or giant water bug. Now here's a little extra credit. When this is over, can you please go online and find out what the scientific name for
yes.
this giant water bug is? Well, that was really cool. So I want to look at another one.
Okay.
So I'm going to come up to the camera right now, and I'm going to show you this guy. So I'm going to say that it has a long body.
Okay.
And it has like paddled tails that stick out on either side. And it has some claws.
Oh, okay.
And it has some antennas. And its body is segmented. What would that be?
Okay.
I'm thinking it is a crayfish.
Let's see. So you've told me all about it, and it definitely, oh yes,
It
it has
has-
more than 6 legs.
Yes, it has 8.
Okay. So we're going to turn then to this page because it told us if it has more than 6 legs, we go to page 6.
So this is a crayfish.
You had it right.
So in your journals, can you do a quick drawing of a crayfish? Now, why don't you just sketch what you think and what you see, but later you can go back and do a more detailed sketch. So this has pinchers on the end of it. So we're going to remember this by pinchers. And then let's remember our water bug by just kind of being a little bigger than we are. So water bug, crayfish, pinchers, and ooh, I want us to look at these right now. So I believe these, I'm going to take a guess on this just by what I've seen before. I believe these are dragonfly larvae. Am I correct, Ranger Jennifer?
You are definitely correct.
Now,
yes.
I've seen dragonflies fly around. These are the larvae. These are what lives in the water for up to 5 years before they become a dragonfly.
And here's a picture right here. The dragonfly larva.
So can we do a little sketch of this guy? Now, we might answer this later, but let's go ahead and just talk about this. This is actually part of a long-standing survey that you guys do here at the park. And in fact, we've even had campers, teachers come here.
Yes.
Tell us about the dragonfly mercury study.
Okay, so the dragonfly mercury study is really interesting. We've been participating for over 5 years here at Mammoth Cave National Park, and there are a lot of other parks around the U.S. that do this as well. But you cannot test mercury in a human. You can't do that until, sorry, you can't do that until later after someone's passed. So because of that, we can't do that. So the way we find mercury levels here at the park is by looking at these dragonflies. You do have to get a research permit because we have to actually take the dragonflies and they have to pass away. They have to die for us to be able to do this research. So the permit is written for 20 dragonfly larvae per year. And we come out here and they have to be of a certain size because, as you said, they can stay in that larval form, some of them 3, 4, 5 years. So they've had plenty of time here, you know, kind of ingesting and getting that mercury in them. And we dip net, as you saw Ranger Lizette doing earlier, and we then send the dragonfly larvae to a lab. We actually freeze them in the freezer, and then we pack them in a cooler with some dry ice, and we ship them off. And at the lab, they take them and they grind them up kind of into a powder, and they use a really neat machine called a mass spectrometer.
That is a big word. Now, this is called citizen science or
Yeah.
community science. It looks like we have a few questions in the chat window, so you can go ahead and give us those, Miss Brown.
All right, well, we had a lot of questions about the snakes for a moment. They want to know about the venomous snakes in the area where you are when you mentioned that snake.
So, Miss Brown, I'm not sure if that question is coming from the kids or you, because when you were here this summer, you were a little worried about the snakes. So, Miss Ranger Shackelford, let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. What kind of snakes will we find here?
Okay, so in the pond, we definitely have northern water snakes. They don't bother you. I mean, any snake could bite, but we just kind of stay out of their way and it's fine. Here at the park, though, above ground, you'll find 2 different types of venomous snakes. We have copperheads and we have rattlesnakes. And so I have seen those occasionally out here in the woods around the boardwalk. They never bother anyone. We just make sure that we're very careful because remember, it's their habitat, and we just sort of stay out of their way and all is well.
And that is true. So when you're out anywhere in nature, we do suggest you wear shoes.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, just because you're walking in their home, you're walking in their territory. So if you were to walk on one, obviously it's going to defend itself. So if you have shoes on, you're safer. And Miss Brown, do we have another question?
We have another question. Why is the pond green?
Okay, so why is the pond green right now?
Okay, that's a great question. So the greenish cast that it has right now is because of all of the plants that are kind of growing around here at this time. During different parts of the year, it'll actually get even more green. When the water is lower, which is right now in the summer and in the fall, the water level goes down and a lot more plants will start to grow and cover that surface area.
Yeah, and we also know that we're out here in the area where there's a lot of sun, okay? So when the sun hits the water, and it creates something called photosynthesis, and that's going to be an abundance of plant life. Now let's make a quick comparison. A few weeks ago we were in the Great Lakes, and Lake Michigan, Lake Superior had a lot of great sunlight that went down, but it overproduced things through photosynthesis. And when it overproduces and then bacteria gets involved, we have something called harmful algal blooms.
Okay.
Now, have you seen those in the park?
We have not. I know outside of the park at some lakes at different times, I've heard of things like that, but no, as far as I know, we have not seen that here inside the park.
Which is great. Another question, Miss Brown.
Sure. Something about how many different types of turtles do you have?
Well, we wanted to find you a turtle today, but unfortunately we were not paying our junior ranger enough, and she was not able to locate one of those. But do we have turtles here?
We do have turtles here at Sloan's Pond. You can find snapping turtles down inside the pond. There are also some different types of soft-shelled turtles that you kind of When I think of water, that's what I associate with it, or those cute little soft-shell turtles as well. So I've seen all of those here. It's a little chilly today, and so I'm thinking maybe that's why we didn't see them. If it was summertime, we would definitely have some, you know, kind of sitting out and sunning on top of logs and things like that within the pond.
And that's probably why we're not seeing snakes either. We're in this time period where the sun is not going to warm them. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and get this over with. We do not have a snake for you, but we do have something that is pretty cool. We are going to bring up, and actually I'm going to have to ask somebody to hand me that, please. It's right there in that container. And then I'm going to give you this.
All right.
So, in bodies of water around the world, especially in lakes and ponds, we have a creature called a leech. So I'm going to see if I can get close enough. I'm going to actually maybe even pour some water out.
Oh, there
I think
he goes
I'm going to have to do it. So I am going to pick up this thing, and I'm hoping I don't scream or, oh, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Here he is. This is a leech. Now, the cool thing about leeches is they can be very, very small. I'm going to give all the water out. He's not going to have much water. They can be very, very small, but then they can also stretch. See how this thing is moving and stretching? This is called a leech. Now, here he is trying to crawl. Oh, he's going to crawl. Oh, okay, there he is. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. We have a leech. We have a leech, and we're going to put him back in the water, and we are going to give him back to his home.
We are safely releasing him back into the water.
And that reminds me of a song, of a dance. So we're going to actually do a dance for you right now called the Leech Dance.
Oh boy.
So I need everybody to stand up. Make sure you're doing this with your teacher's permission. I want you to stand up. I want you to get everything out of your hands, off your body, and we are going to try to imitate a leech. Now, I am not going to lay down on this dock because we have only a little bit of room, so I want you to pretend like I'm laying this way, okay? So I'm going to get really small as a small leech, and now I'm going to start stretching, and I'm going up as tall as I can, and then I'm going to be scared, and I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to stretch and go as tall as I can. Now, you may be wondering, Dr. Drizzle, why in the world would you be scared of a worm? Well, I wasn't as scared of a worm as I was just a little bit worried that it would do a leech thing. And a leech thing is that when it gets on you, your body, it will pinprick you, and then it can start to take out blood. It sucks blood out of your body, which sounds really gross and disgusting, but that's also a medical use of leeches back in the day when they didn't have medicinal things to take care of like blood poisoning and things like that. They would attach a leech and it would suck the bad blood or poisons out. And in fact, today, hospitals still can use leeches on things like melanoma cancer to get the blood that pulls out, or if you're very hypothermic and it's trying to get all the blood that's pulling out. So we're going to do it again, but this time we're going to leech onto something. Now, don't grab a classmate or anything like that. You can leech onto your desk. So let's be very scared. Here we are. And then we're getting strong. And then something comes to us and we're leech. Now, what's going to happen to our bodies when all this blood gets in us? We start getting really, really big. All right, I'm over that. But that was called the Leech Dance. Please go home and show your family members this so that we can share the love since they weren't here at the live stream today. So we've talked about some of the animals here. I know that there's no rare species, but there are some things that we do encounter here. Is there a favorite thing for you that you might could tell us about here?
Yes. So some of my favorite things is whenever we find the different stages, in a frog's life. It is so cool. You'll see these cute little tadpoles, and sometimes you'll find them and they'll start to be, they'll have their front legs and all. And so I love it when we find anything like that. Sometimes you'll see things like pie-billed grebe. Have you ever heard of a grebe before?
I've heard of pie.
Okay, well, a pie-billed grebe, it looks sort of like a duck, but it's not a duck. It's just another type of water bird. And so look that up. That's something pretty cool to check out. And they will stop here sometimes and hang out and drink some water, eat some fish.
And I heard also there's Canadian geese.
Yes.
That come here.
Yep, you will see geese as
and
well.
We talked about those northern snakes and those frogs. Now, we did not catch a frog today, which is very sad because one of Miss Brown's favorite animals is a frog. And we were hoping to have one for her today, but we're very sorry about that, Miss Brown. Next time for sure. What are some of the challenges that Sloan's Pond is facing?
Well, as we talked about a little bit early, one thing that's kind of bad is when people do throw in trash and things like that, that can affect the animals that live down in the water. Another thing that happens is in the summertime, some years we'll have droughts where it doesn't rain for a long time.
Now, a drought, okay, you did it.
Yeah, so a drought is when you don't have rain for quite a while and we need water. The animals need water. The pond will begin to dry up around the edges. I've actually been out here right where Ranger Lizette was at before. That entire area was just completely dry, just dry dirt, and so you lose a big bunch of habitat.
Okay.
And so hopefully, there won't be any droughts for a while, and the animals will have lots of home life here, lots of habitat.
We talk about plants and species, invasive species, things that don't belong here. And I know earlier we were talking about some exotic plants that are here. What are those?
So two of the things that we have to worry about here, within the water, there's actually a type of cattail that is an invasive, exotic cattail. Now there are cattails here. I don't know if we can, I don't see any right here close enough that we can see them in here, but there are some that belong. They're native to the area, and so when they're native, that means that they're supposed to be here. They're a plant that's been here for years. But these exotic cattails can kind of take over. And so that might be a project that we take on soon, a new citizen science project, is students who come here to the park. I believe we're going to start kind of looking at the different cattails and marking down, when we see those invasives and where they are, so we can compare that information from year to year. There's also it's a pretty plant, but we don't want it here because it takes over, and it's called a multiflora rose. And so with that, this year, they redid this boardwalk in the past year or so. And the science team here, we have an amazing resource management team. They came out during the time that the boardwalk was being redone, and they actually pulled out a lot of that invasive rose. Because it doesn't belong here. It kind of takes over the native good plants that should be here.
Well, before we go to the next question in the chat, let's talk for just a moment about native, non-native, and invasive. So we've already talked about native plants are ones that were born here. They use the resources here. They add to the value of the place. Non-native plants are sometimes plants that are brought in by wind, water, or waves. And those are plants that somebody may bring in, want it in their home, those beautiful roses, and then toss it. And it doesn't belong here, but it takes up the resources. Then we have invasives. So those are things that have come into the area and they don't live well together. So instead of saying, look, I don't belong here, but I'm not going to take all of your resources, the invasives take up the resources.
Yes.
So if we make a comparison real quickly to Indiana Dunes National Park, those cattails, which are exotic and people pay a lot of money for, are choking out all of the plants, and it's helping them not be able to restore their marshland. So we need to be careful when we purchase these beautiful plants or animals that don't belong in our area. Figure out how you're going to move them when you don't want them anymore, because even small seeds, I've even heard of kids picking up pine cones in one national park, taking them home, and the seeds that were in the pine cones from other flowers are now invasive plants in their own area. Miss Brown, do we have a question?
We do. We have a lot of questions.
All right, well, let's have a couple of those now.
All right, back from the leech time. Are there any of the leeches, or do they carry any disease like we're worried about ourselves?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Do
my question.
Do the leeches carry any, should we be worried disease-wise?
No, I do not think we need to be worried about those. No.
So at Voyageurs National Park, we take a group of teachers there every summer to Lake Cabotogama, and we actually go in the water there to swim, to take our little showers. And sometimes we'll have a leech, and they do, grab on. But did you know that the secret to that sauce is that we put salt on them?
Okay.
And they come around. But now I am checking with my scientist in the room who may have some information for us about the leeches maybe having some diseases. So if you'll just pass me that and let me just see, because I do not know everything. So let us now say that Dr. Drizzle was totally wrong. Sometimes leeches can carry diseases. They are bloodsuckers, which we know that, but usually it's just an itch, okay? The DNR from New Hampshire waters says that leeches apparently transmit no human diseases. So if they were to bite Ranger Jennifer and then come over and bite me, if she has something, they're not going to transmit those. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you're going to go in the water and if a leech gets on you, tell someone. Tell an adult that and get that off. Miss Brown, next question.
All right. Are there any eels?
Any eels here in the water?
No, we're not going to find any eels here.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. A lot of our eels are found in salt water. So we're going to find those in oceans and possibly even bodies of water that hook to the ocean. But here in this pond, unless someone brings one in as a non-native or an invasive. So no eels here. And let's do one more question.
All right. What is the largest animal that lives there?
So we're going to talk about the largest animal that lives at Sloan's Pond or in the neighboring area. Because remember, we're at Sloan's Crossing Pond inside of Mammoth Cave National Park, which has animals too. So let's talk about this.
So here at Mammoth Cave National Park, we have over 52,000 acres of land above ground. And then there are over 424 miles of cave passageway beneath the ground. So within the pond, I think the largest thing you would find out here in the water would be probably some sort of turtle.
Okay.
Definitely, I would say snapping turtles can get really large. I have seen some that are way bigger than a dinner plate, more like a platter. I've seen those out here in the summertime. On the surface, probably the largest mammal that you're going to find would be a deer.
Okay.
Nice big deer. I saw one this morning driving into work. It was a big buck. It had lots and lots of antlers.
Now, are there black bear here in Mammoth?
We have not yet seen any black bear in kind of modern day. Now, historically, we know that here in Kentucky, if we could go back in time 150 years or so, there were, but not now.
Do we have any big birds here?
Big birds. Sometimes, probably the biggest thing you would see would be maybe something like the Canadian geese. They'll sometimes stop here. And just a few days ago, I came out here because I knew we were going to be here, and it was so neat. Now is the time where they're starting to move, it's getting colder out. And so I was standing right out here last week, and a big formation, a big V formation of those Canadian geese flew over.
And remember, kids, we call that migration. So if you're putting some notes in your journals right now, we are in migration season. So we are seeing multiple birds move. So we talked about this place and how it was man-made. Do you know anything about the engineering of this place? Like even what we're standing on right now. Can we talk about
Yes.
how this was built
We
to
can.
support the lake or to the pond?
So this boardwalk was just redone last year, but even before that, I've been here for 17 years. They wanted to have a nice raised area so it didn't harm anything underneath. Remember, we talked about how when we have a drought, the water goes in. But in the spring, when we have a whole lot of rain, the pond actually kind of goes out. And so underneath these boardwalks, the water will go under. So it's a raised boardwalk that we're standing on right now. That's just kind of right on top of the pond. And so engineering wise, that was something that they did. In the 1930s, when they actually were building the pond, they reintroduced a pair of beavers. Isn't that neat? And so a lot of times the locals, when I was a little girl, they called this the beaver pond. That's what, my Nana and Papa said, this is the beaver pond. Let's go to the beaver pond. But beavers actually like moving water. And so the beavers did not stay around here because this is a pond and it's still. But kind of neat to know. The Park Service, sometimes they do bring in animals that are native to the area. And so we do know there are letters that have been found in the archives that there actually, was a pair of beavers that were brought back here right when we were becoming a park and after this was built. Kind of a neat fact.
It is a neat fact because they were brought here, they came here, but then they realized this wasn't where they needed to stay.
Yes.
It wasn't part of their ecosystem per se. They needed to be more in the moving water, so they left. Question.
Okay, so we want to know, what are some of the threats to the animals in the pond?
Ranger Lizette and Junior Ranger Leanne were a threat this morning when they went out into the pond because they were collecting them with dip nets. But I would also say that the animals here do have some predators. So the question again is, what are any threats to animals here in the pond?
Okay, so as you said, just other animals can be a threat. So there are a lot of little tiny macroinvertebrates like we looked at earlier, all the different little larvae, and other larger, maybe a fish or a turtle is going to eat, these other critters in there. Birds are going to swoop down and eat things, maybe one of the snakes. Yeah, trash, definitely. People throwing things in here. And sadly, sometimes you'll even come out and you'll notice kind of like a little bit of oil sitting on top of the water. So pollution is a threat definitely as well. And yes, people, and I do want to let you guys know something that we didn't talk about earlier. When you go to a national park, if you come here, you can't actually get down in the water like Ranger Lizette and our Junior Ranger Leanne did today. We had special permission, we had a permit, and they were doing things safely. And just as you saw Dr. Drizzle, when she got finished showing you all the leech, we put it back down in there and we take care of everything because we don't want to harm anything.
And that's just a good thing to remember, kids. Don't ever go into a body of water unless you're with an adult and there's been permission given and there's someone there. We want you to be safe. And we don't even know how deep this pond is. When we ask that question, that's not even a known answer because they don't move out into that area. Again, this is a resource that was built to promote an ecosystem, to bring back what was here hundreds of years ago. So I want to introduce to you right now a book. This book is called Over and Under. It is by Kate Mesner. And if you've read any of her things, she has a series of Over and Under books. There's Over and Under the Waves, Over and Under the Rainforest, Over and Under the Canyon. But today it's Over and Under the Pond. So I just want to read you the first couple pages of this to help you understand what could live. So there's this mother and son that are going out on a little boat ride. Not here, because they're not allowed in boats here. And as they are splashing through, they see lily pads. And beside those lily pads, they see reeds. And the little boy is so curious, like, Mama, what's down there? What's down there under the pond? And the mother says the most amazing thing. Under the pond is a whole hidden world of minnows and crayfish and turtles and bullfrogs. Under the pond, there were little rushes of water, and those were whirligig beetles, and we found some of those today. There were minnows darting through the forest of grass, and there was one of those dangers to animals, a brook trout, who was ready to eat some of those. So as we think about where we are in nature, always remember, yes, there's things above, there's things on, but there's also a world underneath our feet. I want you just for a moment just to look down at your feet. And I know that most of you are probably standing or sitting on carpet, and then on concrete, and then there's probably wood. But underneath that, down into the ground, is more diversity, more things, more creatures than even lives on top. So never forget what is underneath the ground. Which brings us to our engineering design challenge. And I'm so excited about this one because it is different than any one we've ever known. Now, Ranger Jennifer, you shared that this was created. This was man-made.
Yes.
For a purpose, not for just recreation, even though this boardwalk that goes around now provides recreation for runners and bikers and walkers, but it was to bring back an ecosystem. So here is your challenge. Inspired by Sloan's Pond, we want you to design your own pond that supports local wildlife and improves water quality. So we want you to think about what you would create, where you would create it. We need you to talk to scientists and city officials and people that know about the ecosystem to say, what would we want to bring back? Now, I don't want you building a pond to put some exotic fish in because that's not where they belong. No. But I do want you to consider what you would create there. When you make these great choices, make sure your teacher sees them and they can upload those to the Padlet. I want to see if Miss Brown has any more questions for us today about this beautiful place, because Ranger Jennifer can talk anything Mammoth Cave. Any questions that we'll have?
Well, are there any endangered species there?
Any endangered species here?
Yes, here above ground at the pond, not that I know of, but down inside the cave, we do have some endangered species. And also, in a way, I guess some of the bats that are endangered might end up coming around this area as well. So in the cave, there is a very tiny little shrimp. It's about the size of your pinky nail, the Mammoth Cave cave shrimp. And then there are a few different species of bats as well that are on the endangered species list. And because of that, above ground in their hibernaculum areas, that's what we call it when they're going in to hibernate, we actually have signs up and don't let people go into certain areas. There's a place called Dixon Cave, and we know that that is a place as well. Sometimes you'll have a maternity colony of bats be there, the moms with all the babies and stuff. So that is off limits. There's a big sign that explains that, you know, you might find Indiana bats there, and they've got it gated off where people can't go in there.
So in your notes, if you'll write the word hibernation in there, and maybe make a list of animals you know to hibernate. We can add those black bears that haven't been seen here, but we do know they hibernate. We can add the bats. And can I just add, do you love the birds and the crickets and all these sounds that are being made right now? They're almost singing to us, yes, like, get out of our place, we're ready for lunch. I don't even know. But make your list of things that hibernate, and then we want you to add some as you research some new things that you've learned. Let's just go ahead and for a couple minutes, tell us about the love that you have for this place because of the cave. So can you give us a quick 2-minute primer on the caves of this place?
Yes, and I also think that Ranger Lizette and I have kind of one of the coolest jobs ever. So if any of you all are 4th graders, that's when I first came to Mammoth Cave on a field trip, and I fell in love, and I thought, maybe I need to be a park ranger someday. And so as I got older, I learned more about it and talked with park rangers and things like that. And now I have my dream job. But the cave, to me, it's fascinating, you all. It began forming so long ago. You know, solid rock used to be beneath us, and it's all here because of weathering and erosion. And so water trickled down, mixed with carbon dioxide that we exhale, made carbonic acid, and slowly carved out these cave passageways. And over 400 miles of passageway, that's so far,
Which
you
is
all.
the longest cave.
We're the longest cave in the whole wide world. Yes.
Nobody else can claim that.
So maybe think about where you live at and look and see what's something that's about 400 miles away. That might be fun to put in your journal, maybe.
Yeah. And it's still growing.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are still coming here and exploring those caves.
There is no end in sight. So I started working here almost 20 years ago, and we only had about 360 miles. And now we have more than 420. So they have discovered over 60 miles of cave passageway, which is a whole lot in less than 20 years.
Well, now, Ranger Jennifer was doing some cave exploration when she hurt her finger, but I'm going to put her on the spot right now because she also has an amazing dance. So kids, let this start thinking about this for a moment. Not only are you learning about Sloan's Pond and the ecosystems here and how the CCC created this place, now you're going to get an extra free lesson on how this cave was created. She's punching me below to tell me, oh my gosh, but she's going to do it. So, Ranger Jennifer, can you just give us your debut of a dance here?
We are going to do the weathering and erosion dance. So here we go. Yes. So weathering is when the rock breaks down. So I want everybody to put your hands together. And yes, I have this silly brace on because I fell, but weathering breaks it. And then erosion is the movement, okay? So weathering breaks it, erosion takes it, and when it all stops, deposition drops. So you're gonna drop down. Are you ready?
Drop my blood.
Okay, here we go. So weathering breaks it, erosion takes it, and when it all stops, deposition drops. There we go.
Teachers, I hope you're standing up and doing this too. Kids, please encourage your teachers to be up. And in fact, if we get a picture of your class with everybody doing this, you're in the running for a new Marvin and Huck book that has just come out.
Awesome.
So are you ready?
Okay, here we go. Weathering breaks it, erosion takes it, and when it all stops, deposition drops.
Thank you very much. Give yourself a round of applause for that. That was absolutely amazing. Miss Brown, I'm going to send it back to you for just a moment to see if there's any more questions before we end our amazing time here together.
Well, Miss Turner's class came in just a second ago with a question. Do any creatures that live in the cave also go to the pond?
Oh,
that's a great question.
That is a great question. So do any creatures that live in the cave also go to the pond? Bats can stay in the cave, during the daytime. They're nocturnal. That's another good vocabulary word, you all. So in the daytime right now, they're not out here. But at night, they come out of the cave. And yeah, they can come out here. And I'm sure this would be an amazing place for them to come and eat tons and tons of insects. One little bat can eat thousands of moths and mosquitoes in just one evening.
Which we love.
So this water would be a great place for them to come and find lots of mosquitoes. Earlier today, that was one of the larvae. You can find mosquito larvae. That's another type of macroinvertebrate you can find here at Sloan's Pond, down in the water.
And bats get a very bad rap.
They do, but they're
not
so
bad
sweet.
things.
Not at all.
Yes.
Bats are amazing. I want everybody to put your thumbs together. Hold out your thumbs. So the species of bats that we have here at Mammoth Cave, they're only about the size, when their wings are folded in like this, of your two thumbs side by side. They're about the size of a chicken nugget, kind of like a furry chicken nugget. And so when their wings are out, hold your pinky and your thumb out. Their wingspan is about like that, only like 5 to 6 inches. There are quite a few. There are over 10 species of bats that can be found here at Mammoth Cave National Park. And that's it. They're not big. Now in South America, there are fruit bats that have a wingspan kind of like your arm span, that are really, really large. But all the bats that we have here in Kentucky, They're just sort of chicken nugget sized.
And they have a purpose. So
Yes,
they're here
yes.
to help us. I'm going to throw it one more time to Miss Brown.
I think you got all of our questions. I will say that I'd much rather see the bats than the frogs, I think.
Well, don't worry. Check your mail, because we're sending you a couple today via UPS in breathing boxes. So make sure you get those and share with your kids. So kids, I want to thank you so much for joining us for our second Crossing America live stream of this school year. As you know, last month we were at the National Mall with the Washington Monument behind us. Today we're at Sloan's Crossing Pond with all these beautiful sounds and smells and animals and plants. Next month we're going to be doing our Holiday in the Parks. Holiday in the Parks is going to be our next big event, and it's going to be on December the 12th. Teachers, this one is going to be a long one, so we are expecting people to drop in and drop out. There will be 18 national parks that we're going to visit, and all of these rangers will be online on our website under crossingamerica.net. Check out the live stream link. You're going to see Holiday in the Parks. Check out the ideas that we put up there for lessons. Check out some of the books that we've suggested. And this weekend, so today's Monday, tomorrow, there will be a list on site that gives you a list of materials that you might want to have in your classroom for this 3-hour amazing event for Holiday in the Parks, year 5 of this. So Ranger Jennifer, we have been working with you for the last few years. In fact, we met during the pandemic. You were one of the first rangers to raise your hand and say, please come visit. If kids out there right now are interested in doing something with the national parks, could you give them any advice?
Yes. So the National Park Service, all of the different parks have websites that have all kinds of really cool information so you can learn more about the parks. Parks also have volunteer programs, and so perhaps you might want to volunteer someday. We often have, a lot of times it's usually more like college-stage kiddos, but they'll come and do internships at the parks. There's a lot of different really great programs where you can come do an internship. And then if you have questions, you can have someone help you online find how to email the park. I get questions a lot. I'll have students that just want to ask a ranger, and I'm happy to talk with whoever and answer those questions.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask Ranger Lizette to get her hat back on, and I would like for Junior Ranger Leanne to join us so we can show you a little bit of behind the scenes. And while they're coming over, is there anyone else here that you would like to thank for helping us put this on?
I would love to thank the Science and Resource Division. 2 of their employees had some great information that they talked with me about last week to just kind of help me get ready. Usually I'm in the cave doing cave tours a lot, and so although we do come up here to do some pond studies, it's not my area of expertise. And so I'm very thankful to Ranger Marcus and to Ranger Bryce for helping me out.
Well, come over here a little closer so we can get everybody in. Here's Ranger Lizette and Junior Ranger Leanne. So on behalf of Junior Ranger Leanne, Ranger Lizette, Ranger Jennifer, myself, Dr. Drizzle, everyone that works in the background, including Steve and Dave, and the National Park Foundation, thank you for joining us today, and we are out of here. Have a great day, everyone.